Nhat says, unless we know how to suffer, we won't know how to be happy. That's the hardest thing in this country is we really, really, really don't like to look at suffering, and we all suffer.
Well, we suffer horribly.
We suffer horribly.
And there's a cliche that, my great friend, the old bastard, bless his heart and soul and all he's done rotted into, J. Edgar Hoover. Remember that name?
I do know that name.
One of the things he was talking about, and he was a very intelligent man. He was highly intelligent. He was a king, but he was intelligent. One of the things that people look at the fact that he thought about keeping people in a special place in life and pushing society with fear. That cancel out a lot of what you're talking about. Am I right?
Yeah,
and we still have that today.
Absolutely, and that's why we can't. It's not just an individual matter. Happiness is not an individual matter. So you can't say, well, you should be happy, you have this, or you should just stay in the moment. We have to be real about the fact that we are living in a place that's in a society that makes people afraid, or it is not safe for
Fear is the medium right now, am I right?
Absolutely, it's not safe. I mean, we all saw Charlottesville, we all know what it's like to walk down the street in Oakland or San Francisco, right? And for many people, it's not safe.
Right.
And so you can't say, oh, feel at home in yourself when it's really not safe out there. So I think that we are taught that how we feel is our own fault, right? If you don't feel good, if you're not just happy, that's your own fault. But the reality is, it is not an individual matter. Our happiness depends on one, coming home to ourselves, and two, making the world a safer place for all of us.
But I heard something once a long time ago, and I picked it up, and I read a lot. When I was in the Navy, I used to read for hours and hours. I would pick up physics books, and I'd read basic physics, and I'd go, and read everything. Then I'd read language and religion and all this stuff. But one of the things I came to read is psychology. Not that I understand all of it, and I'm halfway smart, I guess you can say. I'm a little bit of about one on the totem pole of 1 to 10, or about a 2 1/4, okay? But the word, when you're not happy, psychological aggression comes into your generator. Am I right about that?
I know what you mean. So tell me more. You mean you're not happy, you get angry.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Well,
isn't that where we are, a lot of us, especially in inner city America, not just inner city America, but look at the Appalachians and the Adirondacks, the anger in people because they're not happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think anger is the protector of fear, right?
Anger is the protector of fear, yes.
Right. So when we're scared, it's not safe to be scared. Scared is vulnerable. Anger feels powerful, right? So we want to feel powerful, and so anger is sometimes our only option to feel powerful if we don't have access to other real means of power. I don't think anger is a bad thing. I think anger can keep you engaged, right? But I think at some point anger has to also recognize that what's underneath it is fear, and that's underneath it.
But isn't that a hard thing for some people to do?
Oh, that's a hard thing for all of us to do. Yeah. I think that's why lecturing people doesn't work. I think why telling people not to be angry doesn't work. Have you ever told someone not to be angry and have it work? Right?
They told me that 100 times.
Yeah. Calm down.
Calm down.
It really works really well, right?
That's right. One of the things I want to shout out to somebody who is always talking about the mind, and that's Bishop Bob Jackson, Acts Full Gospel Church. I got to give you a salute because you're always talking about the same thing that we're talking about in different respects, in different ways of getting there. Tell me something. That moment that you achieved total peace, which is elusive to so many of us, have you ever been there?
I think for me, it's like not a moment, it's 1/100th of a moment.
What?
I think there's anytime I try and hold on to it, it's gone. So I think for me, there are moments where I experience a lot of joy, but there are moments, and as soon as I try and grasp it, if I say, oh, I really want to keep this feeling going, that's when it goes away. That's when the suffering comes. And I think, we can have those individual moments, but I also do feel like it's a collective suffering, and we don't get there alone. Like, I don't think we get that moment. Any moment where you're not sort of paying attention to what else is going on, it's hard to feel real joy as long as other people are suffering.
You know, one person who talks about suffering and peace of the mind and inner calmness, that's another minister here. His name is Bishop Sean Teal. You know, and he's one of the more prolific. He's a younger minister, so he's psychologically, he's up on a lot of things that the older people aren't. And I'm listening to you, and he's always talking about achieving that moment of peace. You know, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, and it has suffering in it. I mean, you know, we have this book called No Mud, No Lotus.
No what?
No mud, no lotus.
Okay.
No mud, no lotus, because lotus flowers grow in the mud.
Right.
And they can't grow without the mud.
They can't. Oh, yeah, I saw that.
And so, you know,
They're beautiful.
They're incredibly beautiful, and they need mud.
Right.
And so, the idea behind the book is that our joy and our happiness is made out of the compost of our suffering. So that, you know, Thich says, you know, for me, heaven or nirvana is not a place where there's no suffering. That just is, it's not. It's a place where we know how to use suffering and transform it into joy.
But when people inject negativity and suffering all the time, it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
We ingest this into our psyche. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. We need the worms to compost it, right? We need to figure out
the what?
You know, the worms that go in the compost to like turn it into good soil.
Yeah.
You know, we need the tools to turn. It's not that the suffering itself is the problem. It's not that the anger is wrong. It's not that these things aren't real. It's what do we do with them? What
Isn't that why a lot of people can't achieve any facsimile thereof of some kind of peace in their lives?
Is that they're so, I mean, it's because they're suffering and they're angry.
Right, they're suffering.
I think it's also that they're alone. I mean, I think that's one of the hardest things about suffering, and particularly in our cultures, it makes you feel alone.
You know,
that's why we create books, so you feel less alone.
The other day I was talking to this lady, and she said to me, "What did you look at today?" I said, "I looked at the deer eating my roses, and I said, Bambi's going to be on my table, on my barbecue, Bambi." She looked at me, she says, "Why that?" I said, "Well, I'm just saying something." She said, "What did you see?" I said, "My flowers are beautiful in the morning, you know, when I walk out my door. They're bright reds, they're pinks, you know, and this is my moment when I actually come to peace and thank God for the little bitty things that I have, you know, and I'm a poor man, you know, and at that moment, peace comes on. But, you know, people say to me, well, why do you look at flowers? Because flowers are pure. You know, a flower, it's a rendition of love. And here we go back to this moment. We keep going back to that little tiny, tiny time where we're trying to achieve this, you know. And I'm listening to you talking about a Zen master. One of the things I learned from the Buddhist religion is the inception of peace in the mind is critical to the soul. Did I get that out right?
Say it again. Inception of peace in the mind is critical
to your soul.
Yeah.
A monk told me that when I was like 19, 20 years old.
Well, I think the idea that you have to be peace in order to have peace in the world, that we need to embody what we want to see.
Okay.
Is a little bit of what you're saying. Like, you see that flower, and you're connected to that flower, right? Like, all that you're describing about that flower, its purity, its beauty, like, that's in you, and you see it, and it reflects back at you in a way, right? And so you're being the flower in a way. You're being peace, and I think that's the sort of unrecognized advantage to looking clearly, to looking with mindfulness, is that when you see something beautiful, it reflects that beauty back at you. You're absorbing it in a way. We talk about it as nourishment.
Right.
You know, that's becoming part of you. And I think you can't see things if you're staring down at your phone the whole time, if you're too scared, if you're too defended, you don't see that beauty. And then you don't see it reflected back at you. I mean, I think one of the reasons we at Parallax have really focused on beauty as one of the core values, beauty, joy, and justice, is because we see those things as so central, like bread and roses. You know, I guess is how they talk about it in the labor days. You know, the labor movement, bread and roses, is that you need bread, but you also need roses. Right.
There's kind of a connection to all that. One of the things, my dad was Native American. He was mixed. He was a lot of Native American person, but he practiced spirituality. You know, and he would say, you look at God's earth, you look at everything that's in it, and we're all connected. This is all makes everything all peaceful to us, you know. And he used to grow vegetables, you know, and they were huge. The sugar beets were like this, you know. And I one day I said, okay, tell me something. What is that all about? He said, this is part of life right there. This is the cycle of life. When things grow, we don't learn from it as human beings. You know, and here we're coming back again to this moment. That moment helps us grow. That moment helps us proceed in life. That moment helps us be successful. That little minute of a second, 1,000th of a second, it's a whole spectrum of life for years to come, because you never forget that. You try to achieve it all the time. And the Indian nation does this. I was at Todos Santos in Sedona, you know, and I hitchhiked, and I was sleeping in the sand, and I could hear these voices at night. People said, well, oh, you're crazy. I heard this. I heard this chanting. You know, Todos Santos is the holy city in the sky, you know, and I learned so much from getting around and seeing. So what you're saying right now is, I hope that you connect to somebody, because we need this information from you. And tell me about these books that you've written.
Yes, well, I mean, I think writing, and I know you Gerald, have always been interested, a writer as well, right? Interested in writing.
Oh, my book is rough.
Yeah.
My book is very rough.
That's good. Rough is good. You're writing it.
My book is vulgar, some people say. Vulgarity.
You know,
life is vulgar sometimes.
Yeah, it is. And I think the thing about writing is that you're trying to write not what you think should be said or what makes you sound right, but what you can stand behind.
Right.
Because especially in a book, it's something, you know, I mean, it's why I'm a book publisher as opposed to like a magazine publisher, because I used to do that, or a newspaper publisher. But to me, there's something very powerful about words that you can stand behind and that are both timely and urgent, but also timeless. So these books will be there for, you know, 20 years, as long as there's humans here in 20 years.
Right.
So that the idea is like, what do you want to say that you can stand behind in the long term? Not just right now while you're scared or mad, or right now while you feel this way. So that's what we look for to publishers. Books that are relevant. I mean, we publish books right now, for example, we have this book called Ocean of Insight, and it's about the ocean. This woman who sailed almost by herself across the Atlantic Ocean, and what it taught her about the environment and climate change. So some of the stuff you were talking about with Hurricane Irma.
Right.
But the book is timeless, so it's relevant because it really talks about how do we respond to these natural disasters in a more thoughtful way, but it's also timeless in that the lessons it teaches us we can use in our daily life no matter what's happening.
You know what I learned from a Buddhist priest, and I saw something, and he had been Harvard educated, blew my doors off. I said, where? He said, I went to Harvard. I said, USA Harvard. He said, I went to Harvard. I graduated from Harvard. And I said, okay, tell me what's the most profound thing you can tell me today, and I'm 19 years old. He took both of my hands. And I had, when people touch you, you feel weird, you know, that feeling. He said, I want you to remember this as long as you live. There are those of us who live to challenge life, and then there are those of us who live and let life challenge us. He said, lo, I am a challenger, my days might be short, they're oh so sweet. Then he said, Selah, which I'm going, okay, well that's Arabic. He said, no, it's Christian. Selah. And I'm sitting there looking at it, and I have remembered that. You know, and I'm sitting there going, okay, and here you are in the same element, I guess I can say, of achieving in life the goal through peace and through tranquility in your mind and your heart. So, how do you communicate that to all these people here in this country who have all these isms and jisms?
Right. Well, I mean, that's really the question, right? How do you communicate when people see the world
I've been thinking about that one since
differently?
yesterday, to throw that one at you, okay?
Yeah, that was good. It's a good one. You got thrown it right at me. How do you communicate when people see things so differently? I think that's why, in part, we started with what are things that we all do like we have a book called How to Sit, for
Right.
example, right? And how to, which is something that like, okay, I don't care what you believe, probably at some point in your day, you're sitting down.
Right.
And you buy a book called How to Sit, really what it's about is how to love.
How to love.
Yes, all of our books really, they're about how to love and how to live, but we call them all different kinds of things, right? So, but the idea of like, what is something, okay, we're gonna find something that you think speaks to you that is not an argument,
Right.
right? And then in it will be the kernel of something that if you really take it through to its logical conclusion, you're gonna have to start looking at other people who disagree with you differently. You're gonna have to
Right.
look more fully at other people in the world. And the other thing is that, you know, when they do those studies of where people get their ideas from, and they found that people who live in the least diverse areas are the most
At least what?
diverse areas are the most
Right.
intolerant, right? Like the people that are most, like in Brexit, the people that were most scared of immigrants lived in places where there weren't any immigrants. It wasn't that they were the people who were the most prejudiced weren't basing it on their actual interactions, they were basing it on fear and things that they imagined. And our books are going places where people have never met maybe someone different from them.
Really?
And so, because they're in bookstores, they're in tiny little bookstores in tiny little towns. So, you know, places where people wouldn't necessarily look at you, they might go into a bookstore and pick up one of our books. And so, one of the things that we think is particularly important is to get the words out there of people whose voices have not been heard. So we particularly focus on first-person narratives of marginalized voices, Black people, brown people, queer people, trans people, disabled people, women.
It's just people.
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 People whose stories will reach you in a way that maybe if you met someone, you'd have all these ideas, but if you can pick up a book, you can understand someone's experience at your own pace, and you can get here and reflect back, see how it reflects your own experience. So, as a book, you have an opportunity to reach people in a way that maybe they wouldn't ever talk to me face to face, but they'll pick up my book.
Right.
Because they're in a bookstore, or they're in a library, and they're like, oh, what's this? Oh, Nirvana, I never heard of that. Right? Or what does that mean? Or maybe they look at one of our books, we're having this book.
Where can people find it at?
They can find it in every bookstore, hopefully here in the city or all over, or online, wherever fine books are sold. We love City Lights and Books Inc., some of our local published bookstores.
Listening
but
to
all over.
Thoughts of a Common Man with Charles Achieve Williams on Radio Valencia, the sounds of the mission.
And we're back with Rachel here right now. And boy, we're having a good time. And I just want to say that, one person I want to say something about is Nikita Vaughn. Nikita and her kids travel the world. And then I made some comments about world travelers and people who travel the world in their minds and the way they attack life. Not attack life, but go into life. Whatever you want to say. One of the things is you have to grow. This is what we're talking about today. Am I right? Growing.
Absolutely. You talked about being in Vietnam, and we just published this book by a man named Paul Davis called A Way of Life, which he was a soldier in Vietnam and then went back 40 years later and took pictures of monks and nuns in Vietnam.
Right.
And also here, and we published his pictures along with stories and a picture that he took of Vietnam when he was a soldier there. And it tells in part his journey that he lost his son and he sort of never forgot his experiences there.
Yeah.
And thought about how can I live with myself? How can I grow? Right, given who I am, how can I grow? And what he came to actually was beauty, photography, sort of what we were talking about flowers. And so how can I look for beauty places? And he created this photo book called A Way of Life, which is celebrating the beauty of Vietnamese monks and nuns in all these different settings. And it was a really powerful experience, I think, for him to write the book and to take the photographs in the book. But also it is to read it and really look at how out of suffering again comes this pain, such beauty, and there's an ease and a lightness in some of the pictures where people are working. You see pictures of people gardening, of people building, with a certain amount of joy. And I think that you have that question, how can I grow? And I think unless there's space, right, inside you.
Space.
Yeah, for joy and space for learning, you can't grow. And so I think that that's one of the values, again, of stopping. Just to go back to what we talked about at the beginning. You can't have space unless you stop, right? If you
Right.
keep going and going, you're trying to grab all your stuff for the hurricane. You can't have, you don't stop. You can't have the space to figure out what do I need.
Is
How
that
do I
the
grow?
secret? Is that the secret to helping and suggesting that so many people in the inner city, because you know what, people in inner cities, they don't grow. Millions of people, and I'm gonna say that, millions of minorities, they become in step in life in a certain mold, and they stand there. When you have that space, growth takes. Growth is painful, from what somebody said to me when I was young.
Yeah, I think, it's like those, if you don't have any space, where are you going to grow into?
Right.
You're taking up as little space as you can. And, it's funny you say cities, cities, but the cities are now some of the most expensive places to live.
Aren't
People
they?
are like being pushed out to these
Right.
tiny little places, right? So people who grew up in the cities can't even live in the cities that they grew up in now.
Right.
But wherever they are, they're being pushed out physically and literally. So that
Right.
when you're talking about space, people don't even have the space to live. Like if you're in, the Bay Area, one of the richest cities in the country.
You
people
know,
don't have space to live.
it's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, his name is Rogers, David Rogers.
Yeah.
He lived over in San Francisco all of his life, and he's got 11 grandchildren. And so a guy came and offered him $2 million. He owned 3 houses up there off Montana Street, going out Hunters Point, Bayview area. And he's been owning these houses since forever. And he's 88 years old. So he said, Chuck, I'm going to sell all of it and go. So he took the money and ran. He went to Vacaville. He built 4 houses, 2,500 square foot apiece with the money on 8.5, 9 acres. So I saw him the other day and I said, Raj, I says, what did you see in the moment you moved? He said, I see how my grandchildren changed. He said, they see horses, they see cows, they see fields. They don't just see another person or a person standing on the corner freaked out on drugs. They don't see the stuff that go on. He said, my grandchildren are so open now and they're growing so fast. So what my thing is, out of all that adversity where they lived at, they moved into a society now that's very open. And this is one of the things that I tell people, when you have to move outside of the city, don't think of it as a negative element, because it may be the best thing that happened to you.
Live to get that space at least. If you can move out of the city, you can move and still be around what
Right.
people in your community, then you can have space to
Right.
grow. And we have a book called Making Space, because the idea is you don't have to have a lot of space to make space.
Right.
You can find a corner. Ideally, you have a room, but it's really, if your home's inside you, then that's just maybe a room in that home, and you have some space, right? So, I'm one of those people who always wants everything to I'll do this when I get the perfect spot for it, or I'll write when I have my writing, just move my writing desk because I'm perfectly neat. It doesn't really work that way. If I wait till I have the right amount of space to make space, it doesn't get done. Sometimes you have to push things off to make space. Sometimes you have to put things away, and so your space is going to have to take it right now.
You got a point, because another friend of mine, Dolores, she had to move out to Stockton.
Yeah,
That's a long commute.
that is a lot.
So she had to get rid of her Mercedes-Benz, and she bought a Toyota. What's that thing, Civic or something like that, Honda Civic, and she drives it every day. Then I said, why don't you ride a commuter bus? So she says, I never thought about that. But her kids now grow vegetables. She has 3 kids, and the oldest one was so incorrigible in the inner city. This guy is growing all kinds of stuff. The whole yard is full of stuff now.
Don't underestimate the garden, right?
Yeah.
Don't underestimate what happens with the garden. What can happen by growing your own food, right? Being
Just
self-sustainable.
growing things, see things grow.
Things grow. And they happen kind of slow. So it makes you take space.
Right.
I don't know if you ever read Frog and Toad as a kid?
No.
But it's a kid's book where he's yelling at the seeds to grow and they don't grow. Plant some seeds and he wants them to grow right away. And so he yells at them. You know, he waters them, then he still wonders why they don't grow. And after he has a tantrum and throws his watering can on the ground and cries and yells and goes to sleep, you know, in the morning he wakes up and the seeds have sprouted. And
That's a good book. What's
it's
the name
really
of it?
good. It's Frog and Toad.
Frog and Toads.
Frog and Toad. And I don't, yeah, he has a lot of stories about Frog and Toad. They're the main, I think it's called Frog and Toad's Adventures. I'll have to look at which one that one's called. I'll send it to you.
But when you plant something like that in a kid's mind where he can see something grow, doesn't it change his whole way of thinking?
Absolutely. You know, whether you're planting a real seed or just the idea, right? You said that the man who went to Harvard, he planted the seed in
Right.
you, right? And
Right.
you were saying, how do people grow? It takes, you plant a seed and then you water it, right? We have a book called Planting Seeds that's all about how you teach mindfulness with children. So, and it's really that same idea of gardening where you plant a seed and then you give it space to grow. You water it, but you don't stay on it all the time.
Right.
Right? Like you're saying with his nephew or his son who was incorrigible.
Right.
If he's just on him, you know, when you're on a kid all the time, they just fight, they just push you off.
Right.
You have to give him space to grow.
So the other day, he really surprised his mother. He said he wanted a horse. She liked to have a fit. She liked to die.
Well, is he getting to get a horse?
I don't know.
I'm
Or
not
she's a single parent.
Yeah,
You know,
a horse is a big animal.
And a horse is a big animal. And it takes speed. It takes. A horse is like a child. I grew up with horses.
Wow.
And yeah, in Louisiana, and my granddad was a horse person, and it takes a lot.
Yeah.
It takes a whole lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but animals have a lot to teach us too. You know, I mean, maybe you can't get a horse if you can start with a cat. Like,
Oh, this kid wants a horse.
He wants a horse.
He's gonna get him one.
Really?
He says, I'm gonna buy a horse before I'm 21. He told me that the other day. I'm going, wow, man, a lot of responsibility.
You know, that's another thing that people lose a lot, I think, especially in cities, but, you know, because we are, but is awareness of other animals and other sentient beings, right? We have one author, this woman named Ty Moses, who wrote a book called Zooburbia, and it's all about stories about animals in the city, about interacting with people and animals in the city, about a man, for example, at Lake Merritt, who keeps mice and has mice for pets, or some pigeons in Union Square in San Francisco, and how she calls an ambulance for a pigeon. So it's there everywhere. I mean, I think some things are easier to see in the country because, like you said, you have the space to grow and the space maybe for a horse. But you know, in all our books, the idea is that you be free where you are. You know, since the title of one of the books that you said to Kristen.
So achieving the millennium, I'm gonna call it a millennium of freedom, is hard.
Yes, it's hard, but it doesn't require any particular tools. It's a crazy thing in this particular society. It requires tools, internal tools. We don't need to buy anything. And to have something that's hard.
This is something that you don't have to buy anything
you don't buy,
for.
You don't need a cushion. Don't go buy a meditation
But
cushion.
yet it's so hard to achieve.
Yeah, you don't even need to go buy one of our books. No. Yes, I mean, we love you to, but you don't have to. You know why it's hard? Because you have to practice and you have to come home to yourself, and that's the hardest thing. You have to deal with your own mess.
Ooh, you just said something that knocked the socks off a lot of people. You have to come home to yourself. I want people to respond back to me on that one. What do you do when you can't come home to yourself? I have a friend yesterday. I had to go pick him up, and he's retired. He's about 76 years old, and he drinks profusely. And he always says he's drinking his demons away. And I had to go pick him up from out of the hospital yesterday. He fractured a hip. Okay. And I said, okay, tell me something good that you saw in all of this. He said, I saw the face of my mother. He said, and here I am 76, and I'm going to have to stop and kind of come to some kind of peace in myself. That was what he said. And so what we're talking about today is so many people in so much trouble, and they can't come to that little millennium of peace. And it's a microsecond, am I right?
Exactly.
I learned something today about that. Yeah. And we try to achieve that our whole lives.
we're all sort of homeless outside ourselves, right? We can't
Right.
come home to ourselves. How are we gonna do anything else?
You know, I have a kind of it's not a fetish or something. It's kind of a thing. I like speed. And I went down to Phoenix in February to rent a race car and to do, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I went right at 199.98. And that second that I felt that, you know, it's just something you can feel when you get there. I felt like I had achieved something I've been trying to achieve for years. And that feeling still lives today.
What was that something?
Just like me and God. Quick microsecond. God, I'm here. Yeah.
And letting go maybe of everything else, because I mean that's good. You have to get that speed.
Just letting
let
go.
of it all.
You're listening to Thoughts of a Common Man with Charles the Chief Williams on Radio Valencia, the sounds of the mission.
And we're back here again with Rachel. And we're having some pretty spirited conversations about things. One of the things I want you to do with this here is I want you to download this off of YouTube when it goes on the podcast, and I want you to pass it around. Because here we are, and today, politically, we're under the gun. Our government is kind of jumping into the abyss, but they don't know what the hell is at the bottom of the abyss. You know, and yesterday, to solidify that thought that I have, is the fact that several senators from one party, I won't mention the party because I'm not supposed to do that, they're not going to run again. They just gave up. So here we are getting ready to go through more and more turmoil. In the past 8 months, it's nothing but personified turmoil, as they say in the ghetto, personified. I use that word. So somewhere in this, I want you to take this here broadcast, podcast, where in this presentation on YouTube, and I want you to download it and listen to Rachel. And you want to put your numbers out there, how to get a hold of you, and how to, you know, contact you, your website,
Yep.
all that stuff, and your books, the list of the books you got out there.
Sure. Well, we have hundreds of books out there, but you can find them all on our website, parallaxpress.org. PARALLAXPRESS.org, and you can also find us on social media of all sorts. We're on Facebook, Parallax Press, and on Twitter at Parallax Press, and on Instagram at Parallax Press. So you can find us and you can reach us. We're really good at reaching back to people because we are a nonprofit community press. One of the things we really like doing is talking with our readers. So you can reach us through any of those ways and we will get back to you. And if you tell us you saw us on the show, we'll even send you a discount for a free book. So reach out to us.
Parallax Press.
Parallaxpress.org, or if you're on social media, find us on Facebook at Parallax Press or on Twitter, and just send us a direct message saying you listened to the show, and we'll send you a book.
Woo! Go on, girl.
Yeah.
That's an atrocitation. I don't know what that means, but
I don't either, but we're happy to do it.
It sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds impressive.
It does, and you were talking about about your friends who are growing vegetables,
Right.
growing out there. And I did want to just give a plug for one book that we are doing, coming out, actually not till next spring, but if you let us know, I will send you, which is the Berkeley Bowl Cookbook, which is all of the fresh produce from one of the local markets, and talking about how you can cook with, by paying attention to fruits and vegetables differently, by really looking at them,
Really?
seeing what it's talking about, and making some things that you wouldn't think you could make. So it's just an interesting way to think about nourishing yourself in these times because, as you were saying, these are apocalyptical crisis times, right? We've got hurricanes, we've got this situation, and I don't know about you, but I know for me, I feel a sense of urgency and a sense of wanting to get out there and fix it right away.
Right.
Now, as a book publisher, that's hard to do because it's not that what people aren't like, oh, I know, let's go grab a book, that'll save it. But it is a good reminder in that time when we feel that urgency to take care of ourselves, right? If we're going to go out there, this is a long haul, it feels urgent. But to be out there, we got to be strong and we got to take care of ourselves. So that means nourishing our bodies, right, with good food.
Right.
Nourishing our minds, right, by
Right.
taking the time and stopping, and nourishing our spirits by doing the things that bring us joy.
One of the things that people in inner cities and the Appalachians and the Adirondacks, when I was hitchhiking through the country, I thought that ghettos in cities were the worst. But when you get out in the open country, and especially in Appalachia, it's hard. Life is so hard. And you know, back then, the average person only lived to be like 58, 60 years old because of black lung and working in the coal mines.
Yeah.
You know, whereas people in inner cities still live to be almost 70 years old because of the difference in the environment. And what we need to do is we need to get out and spread the word. You know, Nirvana. Pick up a book and read a book and learn where you're going and learn where you got to go. And you know, I was sitting there thinking about a lot of stuff. You know, we have a person here in East Oakland. Her name is Kelly Carlisle, and she has a gardening program called Acta Non Verba. And I think it's on like 85th or 80 something in East Street. Acta Non Verba. Kelly Carlisle. And if you need fresh vegetables and fresh stuff like that, you know, they grow it right there. The kids grow it.
That's great.
You know, and it's a 1/4 acre garden that they're about, and it's so nice and unique. But we're here looking at these little enclaves in our cities where kids are finding peace at. That's very critical and crucial to growing up, am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, there are a lot of fierce young people in this community.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of amazing organizations supporting them as young people. But how do you nurture so that they can take sort of that righteous fierceness and continue their fire, right? Keep the action.
Right.
And I think what happens is a lot of us burn out. You know, we have all this energy and then we fight really hard, and then we feel like, oh wait, well that didn't work. Or like, okay, but we're still struggling. And it's exhausting. And so I think changing the way that we think about things from this idea that we're just going to fight really hard and then we're going to be exhausted to this is a long haul, and we need to nourish ourselves along the way because we're going to be in it. So for all these young people, to give them resources, and you know, we have a lot of books for young people, particularly for young children, that reflect back to them that need sort of to take care of themselves, especially for kids that are feeling overwhelmed. But then to give them skills then and tools then that they're going to carry on when they get older, so that you're not just burning out with all that fire.
Right.
We have this book called Charlotte and the Quiet Place, which I brought you a copy of a bunch of ones. But what I love about it, it's a kid in the city who just wants quiet, like that thing that we're talking about with space.
Right.
She just wants space and quiet.
That's
and
a hard thing to do.
It's a really hard thing to do, and you know, they think like, oh, the kids think everyone needs books about adventures and more car crashes and more.
Video games are very violent now.
There's a lot of overstimulation. Yeah.
What do you call it?
Overstimulation.
Oh yeah, I like that word.
And I think we all get it. I mean, we're all like, there's the screams, there's the radio, there's the sounds. And it goes back to what we were saying about space. It doesn't give us any space, and children need space to
They
grow.
need to breathe.
Yeah, and to be creative. I mean, which means they need to be bored, they need to be restless, they need to be uncertain, all these things that you can't be if you constantly have a screen in front of you, or if you're constantly having to fight for survival all the time. You don't have time to just relax and be bored, because a lot happens from
Right.
there. So this book is about a little Charlotte in the Quiet Place. It's about a little girl who just wants space. She's in New York City and she just wants space.
When we take a picture out there, I'm gonna put those books up, okay?
All right.
All
Yeah,
right.
I got a bunch of them.
One of the things is you're talking about quiet and peace and tranquility.
Yeah.
Low-income people don't have any idea what that means because they're so engrossed in making a living.
Yeah.
You know, but somewhere you have to let go. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what I'm saying, the struggle is real. This isn't in your head. It's not about self-help, because we can't just do it on our own.
Right.
Because, yes, you don't have space.
Right.
And that's not an accident. I don't think that we're society set up to not give people space or time. You know, you have to get up and take the commute to work, and then work all day, and then come home. That's why, in some ways, to get to where you can have more physical space, you got to start by having it inside, right?
Right.
That's why the Be Free Where You Are. And it doesn't deny that there are real systematic material reasons that you don't feel like you have space. You know, you've got kids, you have work, you have all these things, you're living in a cramped space, and yet still you have your mind, right? That's the one thing that you have to begin with is where can you choose?
And
How
you have
can
to
be
keep
free
that
where you are?
sanity, am I right?
Yeah, and you can't do it without a little bit of internal refuge, without a little quiet
Right,
inside.
right.
Yeah, it's really, really hard.
One lady was talking to me about her kids the other day, and we had this talk, and she was asking me about mine. I said, well, I don't discuss my kids with anybody. Because, you know, people say to me, well, why not? I said, because, you know, they're my kids. My youngest one, he's very well off. At 40 years old, he's making pretty close to $250,000, you know. And, but it's all in getting away. When we were in the military, they had all these programs for the kids to get away. They had what they call flight school on the Air Force Base, where you go learn about flying a jet plane for the day, you know, and they had all these military type picnics where kids went to parks and stuff like that. And they would stop the school day, the military did, because they were not under California, so to respect. They would stop the day and send these kids on picnics and things like this. And that helps kids to grow up, you know. So one of mine is an executive with Macy's. My number 2, he's a part owner in a gymnastics gym down in Hollywood, of all places. And my number 3, he's a test engineer for Sears. You know, they test all these new products. And my number 4 is a business. But you can do it. Anybody can do it, because you know what? Kids need that time. They need that time to get away from the parent.
Yeah.
You know, because the parent is definitely on them. And I'm gonna tell you something. I had a wonderful father. I almost killed him. Because whenever I took off during the summers, I'll be gone for almost 5 months, and I come back just in time to go to school the last night. And his hair was white in the front. You know, he said, "Damn," he says, "I'm gonna jump on you and kick your butt." He said, "But I love you so much." You know, and we would fight. We'd actually go out there and we would actually fist fight, you know, and he'd beat the hell out of me, and I'd take the beating, go on, and next time I'd do the same thing, you know. And, you know, it's all about that little freedom, though. When people give their kids that little moment of freedom, that's their little moment of truth, that's their little moment of peace. And they know what they want. They're intelligent enough today, because you got kids now 3 years old who are computer savvy, 4 years old.
In my first book, Not Quite Nirvana, it's a lot about my children. In fact, that so much so that people who meet me on the street know their names before they know my name.
Really?
Yeah, because they feature in the book, because I think that your children teach you some more than any Zen master.
Right.
You know, and will challenge you. But one of the things that they taught me, and that I talk about in Not Quite Nirvana, is this question, are you available? And it's a lot about what you're saying about giving kids freedom and space, and taking that freedom and space as a parent, because parenting is hard. I don't know about you, but I was real judgmental about parents before I became one. I'd see them on the street yelling at their kids, or I'd say like, "Oh, what am I doing that?" You know. And then I had kids, and then no more judgment.
That changed the whole picture, didn't it?
Yep. You don't. Yeah. All of that judgment goes right out the door, because it's hard. But one of the things that was really helpful for me and my kids was this idea that they would ask me and I would ask them, "Are you available?"
Right.
Before just assuming that I could come in their space or do anything, or before them assuming that I was there to help them, they'd have to say.
Teaching them respect.
Yeah, and I could say no. So sometimes they'd be like, "Mama, no," and I'd say, "Wait, did you ask me if I was available for that?" And they'd say, "Oh, you're available?" And I'd say, "No." And to be able to say no, they're like, "Oh, I'm not available." And then when I was available, I could really be there for them, and
Right.
and to give them that same respect,
Right.
so that if they weren't going to listen, at least give me the respect of letting them say, "Oh, I'm not available for that, but I'll be available in 10 minutes."
But you know what? I'm going to throw a wrench at you,
Yeah,
okay?
do it.
One of the things that I run into a lot, especially in the inner city, is domestic violence. It's very, very high right now, you know. And I was at one place a couple of weeks ago, and I won't mention the name of it, but that's all I heard was domestic violence, this and this. And so when it was all over with, I stood up and I says, well, when does anybody make a decision to move forward and get the hell out? One lady said to me, she said, I got out and I was so afraid, but once I got out, I felt so good. She said, I said, well, what do you have? She said, I don't have a lot of money anymore, but I have my peace of mind. And it's all about decision, am I right?
Well, and space to be able to, and resources. I used to work at a domestic violence shelter
Did you?
in Vermont.
Well, you know what I'm talking about.
I do, and it's a very cold place, you know, so it was winter, so people couldn't see other people. So it's really hard when you don't have community in the street. It's either you're locked in your house a lot of the time because it's too cold to go outside. If you don't have a car and it's 30 below, it's very hard to get out. And so I don't want to minimize the fact that for some people there was really no decision to make in a way. It was like they were in that storm, in that hurricane, and there was no way out. The water was rising, and so and often that phone call was the only lifeline they had. And if they could get to them, if they could get the space where they could have to make a decision, often they would get out. But often they were too busy just surviving to have the space to make a decision.
I understand.
And that's really like a lot of these things, that's really on all of us, right? Like if we're not setting it up so that people have resources and space, then it's really hard to make a decision. You don't feel like you have any decision to make.
Well, you know what? There's a lady out there. Her name is Susan. I won't mention no last names, but she's just about saying that once she found her space, that little bitty space, she was able to move on. So that little millisecond that we're talking about is very important.
Yeah, I think so, and I think
it opens up a whole world.
It does, and I think that also what the culture puts out there makes a huge difference as well. I mean, I think as a culture producer, as a book publisher, we think of ourselves as people who amplify culture and put out what we want to see in the world, but we also have, let's not be subtle about it. We also have a president who has actively supported domestic violence and talked about sort of grabbing people in ways, made that seem okay at the highest levels of our country. And
we have some people in our society that's sick, and you have to look at that. And the fact of the matter is, it goes back to what we're talking about: challenging life and achieving your goals, and trying to make that little millisecond a reality.
Yeah, and I think as a book publisher, we feel responsible for creating books that give people other options and other resources.
Hope.
Yeah, hope. And
hope is a big word.
Yeah, it's really big.
It's a huge word.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, do you remember it was all around in 2008 when Obama first got elected? We had a lot of hope, and then in 2012, we didn't see it as much, and now you never see that word. It's not. You don't see those.
Hope. Is that somebody on the corner with white socks on? Hope? No.
Right. Yeah, without that, it's really hard to do anything, right?
Hope is the catalyst to maybe if and what in my vocabulary. It opens up the door to all these other syllables and all these other words and all this other stuff in life. Hope is, it's without hope. There's a lot happens negatively without hope. Am I right?
Yeah, I think, that one of the best-selling books after the election was Rebecca Solnit's Hope in the Dark, which was specifically about...
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah, I think that's what we try for our books to be, because we're not pretending that these are easy times. We're not pretending that things are going all right, but we're saying, here's a little bit of these books, or hopefully will be something so that you can keep going.
They give
on
you a
fight
glimmer.
Another day. Yeah, get some space, push things out of the way so you can go on for the next day. So you can make whatever decision you need to get out, whether it's getting out of the hurricane, getting out of the house, right? Getting out of whatever situation you're in that isn't working for you.
I know a couple over here in San Leandro that they Facebook me every month. Woo. And one of the things is that they had lived together for 7 years, and she left him because she said there was no hope of them moving out of this little tiny apartment. he'd have his friends over doing football season and track season. He'd have more friends. He was in that man cave type thing. There was no hope, and she felt that she was left out. Well, she left him, and she was gone a year, and he went and bought a house, a big house, you know, and the first thing he said to her is, "I love you, and here's your hope." So that word is synonymous with a
You're
lot of
listening
things.
to Thoughts of a Common Man with Charles the Chief Williams on Radio Valencia, the sounds of the mission.
And we're back again with Rachel. And this is Radio Valencia, as she's saying. We're on radiovalencia.fm, thoughtsofacommonman.net. You go out and look at us. And you know what? When we take some photographs, go on Instagram and all these social media things, and I'm going to have the 2 books that Rachel gave me. One of the things I like to say is we have people here talking about life. You know, this is not fake news. You know, this is the real deal. And I put this out and with the help of Gina, who she cracks the whip on me all the time. I always like to say that, you know. we have a very good working relationship, and we get a lot going. And, you know, we talk about love and devotion. We talk about happiness. Today we're talking about contentment and that little millisecond of a microsecond that, you know, you have to have in order to go on in life. What made you want to become what you are?
That's a funny question. I think I'm still becoming who I am, but
How long you been in this business?
a really long time.
28 years or something like
The
that?
business has been around 20 years. I haven't been there that long, but I've been at Parallax 15 years,
Wow.
almost 15 years. So yeah, pretty much a lot of my working life. You know, I always, I grew up in Oakland, I grew up in the Bay Area, and what I saw growing in the Bay Area was that there was a lot of energy around changing things, but it
Yeah.
wasn't always effective. And that people didn't always treat each other the way that they said they wanted people to be treated in the world. So after going
That's a
right-
big one.
It was huge for me, I think, seeing that disconnect between what people said like they wanted, you know, justice and peace, and then the way that they talked to each other and the way that
Right.
they gave each other, didn't sometimes give each other basic respect, and where there was still a lot of racism and sexism in the movement of people who thought they were trying to make things better. So I became a journalist. You know, I went to school of writing in New York, and because I really felt like that for me at least there was something about the power of words to communicate across difference that I didn't see anywhere else, and that spoke to me. And then after 9/11, I met Thich Hanh, and he asked me to move back to the Bay Area to work at Parallax. And I didn't know anything about Buddhism. I'm not religious, didn't believe in anything, but I was drawn to the idea of a way of being engaged in the world and caring about the world that also was responsible for ourselves, that was also looked at how we treat each other in the day-to-day. Because I think that you know, we talk about how life is made up of these day-to-day moments.
Right.
And if we don't treat each other well in those day-to-day moments, we're not going to make the world better for anybody else. You know? So I think that really spoke to me, was this idea of living with integrity, or trying to live my life the way I wanted it to be in the world.
I'm looking at this post here. We grow sustainably with integrity. We practice full, skillful, compassionate communication. That word compassionate, it invokes passion and compassion, am I right? We commit to social justice in action. That's going back to respect and dignity and care. We choose creativity over safety and excellence over expediency.
Yeah. Those are our values at Parallax. And, you know, we're a really funny book publishing business, or business at all, in that our goal is to make books, but it's also really, we're experiment. We're just trying to be like, what would it be like to run a business the way we wanted to be in the world? What would it be like if we made the books the way that in the way that reflected what they actually say? So it's difficult. I mean, we're a staff of 10 people and a ton of freelancers, and we're trying to be a different way of being a business. For example, we give all our books away free to people who are incarcerated or to teachers, and yet we still believe that
Whoa, whoa,
people
whoa,
should
back
pay for
up,
them.
back up, back
Yeah.
up, back up. Say that again.
We have a book donation program, and we give free books to any incarcerated person who asks, which is usually about 10 to 20 a day we send out.
Really?
Mhm. And that's a key part of our mission. We're there to give books to people who need them. That's why we exist, is to get people or books into the hands of people who can use them, wherever they are.
Skillful, compassionate communication. That's a whole lot of big mouthfuls.
That's a whole lot of big mouthfuls. It's how to talk, right? How do we talk and how do we listen?
This is a major problem in the inner city. You know that, don't you?
I do. It's a major problem everywhere I go. And it's a major
Yeah.
problem in my own family.
Right. I mean, people say things they don't really want to say, but they blurt them out of all kinds of emotions. That this is kind of where a lot of problems come from. Am I right?
I think it's huge. I mean, we have a lot of skills in this country, but we don't have the basic skill of talking and listening to each other. We don't practice it. Right? We practice on our phones. We talk more into our phones than we do to other people. We don't have the skill, really, even of basic communication. How are you? I'm well. How are you? In a way of really listening.
How do you think we lost that in our society?
If our society was ever based on that. I know when you said you've traveled around the world and traveled in other countries and I've noticed other places they have, like in Morocco, for example, they have a 10-minute greeting that you do just to even say hello. How are you? How's your mother?
I saw that when I was there.
How's your sister? How's
Yeah.
your brother?
Yeah.
How's your sister's brother? Uncle? How's your
Yeah.
how's that cousin that I met that one day 7 years ago? And that's just to get the conversation started. So it's almost like it's a tradition, it's a rope where you get to lubricate the conversation and have a way of assuming that that's what you do, is that you just, it doesn't matter the words.
I saw that when I was in Marrakesh too.
Yeah, exactly. In Marrakesh, that's just conversation.
Yeah.
And we don't have that. I mean, I took the BART here, and whenever I'm on the BART train or on the subway or anywhere, I always look around and think, okay, well, if this train goes down, who's going to be the person who's going to be my buddy? Who's going to be the person? And nobody would meet my eye. Not a single. There was one guy who was reading an actual book as opposed to an only one, and I decided he was the guy, but even he didn't meet my eye.
Wow.
He didn't know it.
Have you noticed that people are so in their own world when they get on BART? You know, I
Yeah.
mean, they're sequestered in these what I call blocks of space. You know, that they don't really own.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Well, they have like a wall, right? That's that
wall.
block of space you're talking about. Yeah, I think there's this, the word that we use at Parallax, interbeing. They don't have a sense of interbeing, that they're connected to each other, that they're interconnected to each other.
You know what happened with me one day about a year ago? I was on the BART, and I was just like everybody else. I was sitting there, and I had my phone out, and I was going through Facebook, and I was going through all the messages of the day. And this lady just started crying. She just broke out and started crying. And I didn't know what to say. And she said that she turned to me and says, I am so unhappy. She said, I just feel like I don't want to get off this train and go home. I want to stay on this train. So I'm going, okay, where do I go from here? And I said, well, what happened? And she was telling me about what had happened at work that day. And you see this a lot in our society now. People pour themselves on that train with all these emotions, with all this pain, and all this confusion from jobs, because jobs are becoming very competitive. And she was like 56, 57 years old. She'd been with the company almost 20 years, and they were trying to push her out. So what you're talking about is just reaching out, am I right?
Exactly, and that's the one that we make our books for. I mean, the idea that somebody's out there, we're all out there, we're all that woman, and
Yeah.
sometimes there's nobody sitting next to you. I mean, a lot of times people say they don't know what to say, that that that's why they don't do anything. But if you're being present, right, if you're truly in that moment, you don't even have to say anything, just you being next to that person.
Right.
I remember there another time when I was in Vermont, that same city where I was working in a domestic violence shelter. There was one time where we had a hard day at work with cases, and
those are mind-blistering days, some of them.
and I was carrying home groceries from the supermarket. I was walking in the snow. I didn't have a car, and my bag. I had a single bag, my groceries, and the bag fell apart. You know, my oranges went one way, and the eggs smashed the other way, and everything. And the milk had totally, splashed all over my clothes. And I sat down in the snow on the curb, and I started crying, and I was crying into my hands, and I didn't even look up. And somebody sat down next to me, and they didn't say anything. They just sat there. And then at some point, they put their hand on my back really lightly, like not in it all, just super light. And I just didn't even look up, but I still cried. And then they left. And I never knew who that person was. But they were present in the moment. They didn't know what to say, and they didn't have to say anything. But I got the
Intervention
intervention
when something positive happens feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that, often the times, you at least saw that woman. Oftentimes if people have their headphones on or they're looking at their phone, they don't even notice that the woman is crying right next to them. It's like if you don't stop and pay attention, it's good. Turn off radio, non-stop thinking, right? It's what.
You know what, the only thing I could think of, I gave her one of my cards.
Yeah.
Then I gave her a sign and gave her a book, put my phone number in it. Do you know that every so often I get a call from her?
Really?
Every so often. Not anything programmed, anything like that, but just every once in a great while she says. And all she says is, Charlie Williams, how you doing? This is Claire. I said, hi Claire. She said, I'm okay today. That's all she ever says.
Wow.
This is like over a year. And God is good. I shouldn't say that too loosely, because here I am with my crazy ass life, and I have had one wild crazy life. Trust me. God, when my dad, when he passed, he probably said, "Ooh, Lord have mercy, thank you for the ride," because I put him through a lot. But in 1985, me and 4 friends, we rode motorcycles all the way up the Eastern Seaboard, across the Great Lakes into Canada, all the way across the Alcan Highway, into Nova Scotia, all up there, all the way across, and into Saskatchewan. We stayed there. And we were gone 31 days, and I met all these really wonderful people with all these different ways of life. And I look at the fact that if we could take all of this and encompass it into one little small thing and watch it grow and give a little bit to everybody, we have a better world.
I think you just described the definition of book publishing. You take all those things and you condense it, and you give a little bit to everybody as your hope. I mean, that's the hope of it, right?
Yeah, hope. The Tiddalik Indians, the Tiddaliks, they like to drink, they like to hunt, they like to live yesterday. But they're some of the most warmest people that you can. They're all over Canada, and and I learned a lot. And here we are talking about things I've sustainably lived for over 55 years on the road. I've been on the road typically since I was 16, and I never stopped. And to meet you today with this small microcosm of all that I've learned in life, it brings back a lot of memories. And it brings back a lot of people that I have learned life from. And there's one lady, her last name is Tabina Sal, and she's from Africa, and she teaches the same thing that you're talking about. She tries to teach people about peace. She's on Facebook. Hell of a woman. She's a Facebook partner of mine. If we could ever get these 4 little thingies out right here, we grow sustainably with integrity, we practice skill, compassion, and communication. We commit to social justice in action. The social justice in action is huge right now. And we would choose creativity over safety and excellence over expediency. Very powerful. Now, who's the author of all this stuff?
We are. I mean, our staff got together and said, what are the things that are
Get
most
out of
important to
here.
us? Yeah, we did. Yes. That's the hard part and the good part of what we do is that we really sit together and say, okay, what do we really need? What's most important to us? And to live here and do the work that we do, you have to believe in it. Right?
So how many people got together and did this?
I think there were 10 of us. The
Wow,
staff was 10,
very
10.
powerful.
Yeah, it's you have to know what your values are to do the work that you're doing. I think because if you don't know, how else do you know how to make choices? So. We always go back to that. Okay, should we publish this? Well, I don't know if it's going to sell well, but we value
You're
excellence over
listening to
speed.
Thoughts of a Common Man with Charles Achieve Williams on Radio Valencia, the sounds of the mission.
Hey, we're back again. This is the Chief, Radio Valencia FM, and then thoughtsfromacommonman.net. And get to us today. And like I said, I want you to download this to everybody and pass it on, because in the wake of Hurricane Irma, now we're seeing that all these other tragedies awaiting in the Pacific and the Atlantic, and especially in the Caribbean, are coming our way because of global warming. And we as a society, we need to get together. You know what the funniest thing I saw was on Facebook was these 6 little creatures that NASA had. And they would align themselves up, and then they would move, and then they would break apart, and 2 would go this way, the other 4 would go this way, then all of a sudden they'd get back get back together. And one of the things that I look at is this is a message to mankind to get together and fight, because you know what? We need to protect Mother Earth. We're at the point now where we have desecrated so much, and the ozone layer is so polluted that it's just, we're taking in and keeping the heat of the earth on the earth. Where are you going from here with your life and your ideas and all the things that you're doing right now? How do you see that you're going to grow? And I'm going to throw that one at you.
Well, there's so much growing to do. That's the good part, I guess. There's a lot more growing to do. One of the things that I see is that there's a lot of people still we're not reaching. Where I think this idea of falling in love with Mother Earth so that we can protect her is really
Right.
big. And falling in love, I still want people to get to see the people that they are making decisions about. So one of the books we're doing, for example, we're doing a book of immigrant teenagers from Oakland that's coming out in the spring.
Oh, really?
And it's called I Am Home. It's portraits of immigrant teenagers. And the reason I want to do this project, it relates to the things about the earth, is because I think that when you really see people, right, when you look up from on the subway, when you look up from the BART station, you can't help but fall a little bit in love with them if you're really looking.
Right.
And then you treat people differently. You don't want to make decisions that destroy their lives. And I think in a funny way, that's the same thing that we do need to do with Mother Earth. When you really look at that flower, right, that rose that you were talking about, you have a relationship to it. And then the idea of saving the earth, quote unquote, or climate change isn't some abstract idea. It's about that flower in front of you. So my purpose, as I see it here, is just to wake up and help other people wake up to that, to help people have the tools they need so they can really see. And for me, at Parallax, that means making sure our books are places where they haven't been before, and really listening to what people have to say and publishing the voices of people who haven't been heard. So what I would say to all the people listeners is go out there and find something that speaks to you. Find a book that helps give you space. And if it's not there, write it. And then send it to us to publish.
One of the things that I like about you, that I've fallen in love with the way you say things, is that communication is the basis of basic things that we need to get all this off the ground. Am I right? Did I put that right?
Absolutely. And by communication, I just mean looking, listening, not speaking. Those two. I mean, I think when people talk communication, they all go to like Toastmasters and how can I talk to convince people? It's not about talking. It's about listening. It's about stopping and looking and listening. So,
how about being an example?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's being an example of what you want to be in the world.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why, Parallax was founded with the book Being Peace. That was the first book that we published.
Oh, really?
Before my time. And with the idea, with that very idea, because of Thich Nhat, which was like, if you want peace in the world, you have to be an example of peace. There's absolutely no other way to
Living.
get
I saw something where you
Yeah.
said well, you're living. Where did I see that at? Where you're actually practicing what you preach or something
there.
like that?
I can't remember how we put it in there, but yes, something about,
Let's see if I can find
we
it.
call it, walking our talk.
Walk, yeah, there you go.
I don't think we call it that there, but that's how we call it internally. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, this is Gina, the producer. And Rachel, I just wanted to let you know, one of the reasons you're here is because Parallax doesn't put out garbage. There are a lot of publishers out there that are feeding out a lot of crap to your brain. We don't need that. We see enough negativity and all this violence and everything. We don't need it in our entertainment. And that's what I liked about you guys, and that's what stood out to me about you when I was doing my invitations. It's like, I like these people.
Yeah, we like you too. we really do want to put out. We only put out the good kind of compost, not garbage.
Right. We're feeding the mind, we're feeding the soul, and we want to make you feel good. I like that.
Oh, awesome! Thank you. Well, that's what we try and do, and bring you joy as well, and then we give you your justice with a little side serving of joy and beauty.
Exactly.
We've talked about a lot.
We have, and we only we scratched the surface.
We scratched the surface.
Yeah.
We're going to say to people out there again, get out and download this, get out and pass it on, because with everything happening today, Irma's not the first or the last of what's going to happen to Mother Earth, am I right?
That's right.
Catastrophes are coming. Pardon me, Gina?
It's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse. So, you know what? One of the things that I have to watch what I said about the political spectrum of our country. We need to drop all the BS and just become people and link together, because if we don't link together, and it's about spawning ideas like this book here. This little book, I looked at the cover, not quite Nirvana.
That's right.
Not quite.
Not quite.
Might be all we're gonna get, though.
A life story that is honest, practical, charming, and helpful. Jack Kornfield, author of Power with a Heart. I'm looking at the inside of it, and over the past 10 years, Rachel has edited more than 20 of my books, thanks to her profound outstanding and my teaching style and voice, my message that has been communicated clearly, correctly, and authentically. And this is the same thing Gina's saying. You guys talk the truth. This is true. And again, this is not quite Nirvana. And I want to take a picture with this, and I'm going to sit there and do one little thingy like this right here,
Yeah.
but people can see it. And I want to show this other one's The Mindful Athlete. I've heard about this book here, and it's quite a good book. And I'm going to go home and sit on my old tail and not work on cars or do anything. And I'm going to read both of these by next week.
All right, I'm gonna call in, and check you on that.
The,
right on
yeah,
Facebook
Not
and ask
quite
you some
Nirvana
questions.
seems to be the one that I am really favorite of, because wherever I've lived in the world, people have tried to find that little millennium element of peace, and it's hard.
It's hard. We're all searching, right? And instead, we gotta stop searching and start looking inside, and we'll find it.
What do you say to single mothers who are looking for this?
I bow down to them is the first thing I do. I do. And then I say, take this book and take care of yourself. Just, like whatever you can do, like give yourself a moment. Become not available to anyone but yourself, and see, because really it's a hard road, and
It's a very hard road. That's why I said something.
but you know what? You get this. Time for yourself, I think, is critical. And that's not saying time for yourself isn't time for other people.
Right.
They go together.
Right.
Find that space for yourself.
Single mothers are my heroes. You know that, don't you? Over everything. Single mothers are my heroes. I've seen some good ones. They're engineers, they're scientists, they're teachers, they're everything. And we, the man population, forget that.
Yeah.
The man population has got his head up his butt somewhat. they're very demanding, they're very selfish, and that macho little thing creeps in there, and we forget that women are our stables, you know, and we forget that we don't ever say thanks to them.
Right. Well, I'll say this to my single mama who's out there right now at
Uh-huh.
76, running, or 7. She's off gallivanting the world, which is what she does, and she's leading a Qigong retreat right now. So this is a shout out to my wonderful single mama.
You're quite a hell of an individual.
And we're winding down here.
Amen.
I just want to thank you, Rachel, for coming.
Thank you for having me, Gina. Thank you, Charles.
You're super.
And I will be putting out a podcast and a video. And as the chief says, share, like, spread it around. And
Spread.
so this show and all past shows, you can check them out on thoughtsofacommonman.net. And with that, I think we should get out of here. Chief.
Amen. I love you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Rachel.
It's wonderful being here.
Amen. Mercy.
Parallax.
Bam.
Thank you.
Bye.